90% of kids are molested by somebody they know and trust, somebody in the child safe world.
For years, I carried this sense of shame about what had happened, as though it was my fault. I was raped at the age of 14 and didn't deal with it, didn't tell anybody for a really, really long time.
My earliest memory is 7, and it went on probably until I was about 14 or 15 years old.
How do you go about being parents of a child who's been victimized?
Safe Places is a program to educate and empower all adults to learn about child sexual abuse and how to keep kids safe.
Had my parents had the education that's available now, they would have intervened.
We started with Safe Church, but we've always had the emphasis in Safe Church that it's never been about keeping it within the walls of the facility of the church. What we try to do is create a community of support for people so they have numerous people who are safe people that they can talk to about whether it's sexual abuse, whether they're contemplating suicide, but people need safe places.
When I grew up, we just didn't really have that. You trusted the people, the adults in your life, and that was it. And if you said anything, who was going to believe a kid over, someone that was trusted and respected in the church?
Just because it's a church does not necessarily block sexual sin that people may have.
Research with convicted sexual offenders tells us that 93% of convicted child sexual offenders describe themselves as very religious. The ones who are the most egregious offenders, have molested dozens or sometimes even 100 children, are the ones who were most active in church settings.
At 2.5, we just started to notice our daughter behavior just changed, and we just said, this is not our child. This isn't who we had seen just a few months earlier.
She was a baby. Our life was full of color, and she was a natural-born artist. She loved to paint, and she was smiling, happy, loving, giggling, loved to dance. Things changed in such a dramatic way that it caused a lot of concern for us, and things seemed a lot darker. And she first became really frightened with diaper changes, it created it shocked me so much how she would scream in fear. She didn't seem happy anymore.
Play raised some questions for us as well, how she was interacting with her stuffed animals and her dolls and things like that.
She no longer wanted to hug us or us to give us kisses, and even to play with her seemed very difficult. She seemed bothered by any kind of touch.
And took her to the doctor and explained a little bit what she was doing with the dolls, and they said that's not normal child sexual development. This is something where she has been exposed or has been traumatized in some way, and is.
At night, she would just tell us one more thing and one more thing, until eventually it was almost her birthday where she specifically told us it happened at church and someone had sexually molested her. We learned about what Safe Church was doing in and around churches in the county and actually across the country. And we were excited to hear that there was a place that was creating awareness for parents so that other people might not have to go through what we went through.
It takes a broad-based social movement to actually shift culture, almost as we did for civil rights. You need that kind of public engagement to say this is enough. 25% of girls, 20% of boys sexually molested before their age 18 is not okay. When someone is abused, people have depression, they have anxiety, they have difficulty in intimate relationships, they turn to drugs or alcohol to numb some of the feelings. They will go on many times to develop problems with sleeping, problems with intimacy, and these are adults. And these symptoms can linger for decades after the abuse if someone isn't helped. With kids, we have the same sort of signs, but we also have behavioral signs, such as a kid that spaces out a lot may be dissociating, because that's a common reaction when a child is abused again and again, that you kind of space out, leave your body almost, so you don't really integrate what's happening to you. It's too difficult. It's too painful.
Church ought to be a place of safety and welcome and love and nurture, and this ought to be the community where survivors can come and tell their stories, and it should be just the place where it is a safe place for all of God's people. It is of paramount importance.
One large-scale study of over 19,000 women indicated that the vast majority said there were spiritual wounds that they hadn't been able to heal.
At the end of the day, I needed God to tell me where he was. I needed to know why he didn't protect me like I thought he was going to protect me. And I don't know that I have all those answers, but I do know that he was there with me. I do know that when the rape got too bad and I couldn't take it anymore, I really believe that God pulled me out of that and stepped in there and took that pain for me.
Kids will say things like, I don't think God loves me anymore. I don't think God cares about me. We hear adult survivors say, where was God when I was raped?
I think churches need to be more of a community and supporting each other in everything. I mean, my church, for example, does great outreach, but I don't think we take care of each other as well inside the church. I don't think we're a real community yet. I think we're becoming that, but I think that churches need to be more of a community with each other.
It's just really important to provide that space for people to be who they are and to name that so that there isn't that stigma that's associated with it. And I think churches are a great place for that.
When we encountered this in our child's life, it became, it was very much a surprise to us. And we were very protective as parents and watchful over our children, very involved with our school program in particular, being chaperones and helping to just participate in the growing up years. One that we thought would be a good counselor for us, that being at the time our pastor. And what he advised us to do broke our heart just as much as anything, because his recommendation was that our child made the choice and that they need to live with that. At that point in our lives, we were just crying out for the right next choice. And when I heard that call on the phone and I was invited to a parent support group, it was like spring water for us. And that support group actually became the way in which we could breathe as a husband and wife and learn and make gain the information that we needed to help our child to get on the right track.
We as a family went to see a psychiatrist, and that was a long, long time ago. And I never brought up the abuse during those times, but they apparently called him when I disclosed, and he wasn't worried about me. He was worried about the abuser, more so than me. And so it's just a lot of, it's your fault. You were part of this whole thing. You walked in your pajamas in the house. And you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't walk around in your pajamas in your own home. Definitely, the family dynamics have been a huge part of this.
This is not something that was talked about in any of the circles we were in, and nobody knew how to help us respond to it, and it was very scary. So I think Safe Church creates an awareness for people that this can be a reality for anyone.
When I do training for facilitators, I'll do an activity called Common Ground, and I'll ask for people to come into a circle if they have a friend or a family member or somebody they care about who was sexually abused as a child. If I have 20 people in the room, usually 15 to 18 are going to step into that circle.
I think going through the training, I needed to go tell someone. And I thought, our pastor out, and I went and I said, I wish we would have had this many years ago. And with a very stunned look on her face, like, what do you mean? And I explained to her what had happened to me, not only once, but twice, and one person being in the church.
Linda Crockett came to speak at a clergy group that I belonged to. The way that she did it was so pastoral and sensitive and timely. And I thought, wow, this is something that I would love for St. John's to be a part of. And then I reached out to Linda after she did the presentation and said, hey, I am a survivor of abuse and I would be willing to speak as a part of the Safe Church program. I really hadn't shared that in a public way before. There were family members and friends who knew, but the congregation didn't know. And I had been dealing with symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder and things like panic attacks. There were times when I would get in the pulpit and just get really nervous. In high school, I was kind of this classic overachiever. I was a drum major. I was used to being out there in public in front of a lot of people. I did high school musicals. I had a lot of speaking roles and never struggled with public speaking. And then after my abuser left the house, all of a sudden I started having this extreme panic in public places. And it was really hard. It was debilitating, frankly. And as I went through the counseling process, I had a sense that I would like to be able to share who I am and be completely open with the congregation, with the community, and maybe liberate others to do the same. I wanted them to say, hey, this is what a survivor looks like. These are the symptoms that are real to live with. Just wanted to kind of name it and be out there. And I was ready to do it at that time. And I hadn't been ready before. And Linda's program was so safe.
Girls who are sexually abused lose a sense of themselves. They don't know how to protect themselves. They don't have a set of boundaries that are healthy, and so they're very vulnerable to abuse. What we need to teach adults, and we do teach this in safe places, when you see that girl, the question is, what's happened to her? What's happened to that girl that caused her to act this way? That's the question that we have to be asking, and that's the way we shift culture, teaching adults to ask those kind of questions.
I never forgot what happened to me. But until I was able to put the pieces of it back together, it didn't make sense.
If you don't know the breadth and the depth of the issue, the spouse of the survivor can really be blindsided. People who aren't involved in this at all sometimes feel that the survivor is the one who's hurting. But in reality, the spouse and the family can be genuinely displaced, if I can say that word, as badly as the survivor has been. So there needs to be an understanding not only of the survivor, how to perhaps defend the survivor, how to help the survivor grow and to overcome a lot of the obstacles which were before them, but also the family.
Survivors, if they have not gone through counseling, if they have not prayed through things, looked at things from a really spiritual kind of level, they lose time. Like, I've lost so much time with my family and so much time with my husband just by not kind of being able to be there and not really understanding what was going on, but being present was, I think of those 20 plus years that I really wasn't as involved as I could have been with my family.
Finding somebody you can trust, and that you can share your story that's going to believe you, that isn't going to be dismissive of you and say, oh, just get over it. Other people have gotten over it. Why don't you just get over it? Kind of thing. I think it's having people believe in you and believe your story and say, no, this was not okay, what happened to you. And finding those people and just keep on looking until you find them.
I did go tell someone. It might have been 50 years later, but I told someone.
I think it helped us survive and helped our family stay intact.
Survivors are all around us, working in grocery stores and hospitals. They're all around us. We just don't recognize them, and I just think it's because they don't have a big enough voice. This is what it looks like. I look like everybody else.
I just need to get that word out there. Just talk to someone. Don't hold it in.
Maybe the next survivor is not going to have to spend 20 years not knowing what's going on, and they get a better grasp of it so they can live a more full life.
We have to move from intervention after the fact to preventing it from happening in the first place. And that's only going to happen if we're talking about it, if we're educated about it, and if we're aware of it and can take steps to keep that from happening.
We need to be a part of letting people know what they can do to protect their children.
Folks would rather just move on, and I'm kind of like most folks, but it's more important that this be placed on the table.
Empowering children is a really big part of the Safe Church program through their education, and that, I think, plays a vital role in prevention.
This program is worthwhile and much needed.
People hear Safe Church, they think it's just about creating safety within the church, but Safe Church is more than that. It's using a church to create safe places, really truly safe places for children everywhere.